Woo-hoo-hoo. And we're live, well, previously recorded, live once again on another Tuesday. And I've got Sarah Townsend in the house today from across the pond on a time change week, which is like, but it's a wonderful week. And I'm excited to have Sarah here. And we have a darn good reason for why this is being a previously recorded live. And we'll tell you guys all about that. But first of all, Sarah, let me welcome you to the show today. And can you please tell people who you are and what you do? And then we'll get stuck in. Oops. Anything can happen on a live. Me clicking the button is what happens. Okay, sorry, Sarah. Start again.
No trouble. Yeah. So hi, thank you first of all for having me on. It's always lovely to talk to you, Gillian, and your audience. So I've been a freelance marketing copywriter for 25 years now. And I've also written 3 books, one about freelancing and 2 about language, which we'll come on to in a little bit. But yeah, I help marketing managers and business owners to, I guess, detangle their messy marketing messages and make their words more ta-da and less blah, blah.
I love that. And I love the actions that go with it. So that's really, really fun. Yeah. So our topic today is from success to sequel, writing book number 2 and expanding your brand, because there are so many benefits to writing a book. And Sarah, I have to confess that for every book that I've written, that as you start writing, you always just end up with more. And you're just like, there comes a point where you say, I have to stop writing. I can't add any more. And there's a little voice that goes off in your head and says, maybe I'll just set this aside for book 2. So I think that what you've done will apply to many of thinking about, okay, what is book 2 and how does that all work? So can you take us back and tell us the story of actually when did book 2? So let's clarify what's your book 1 and book 2. So give our titles then. Let's start with that.
Okay, so just to confuse the issue, this is book 1. And I have not done the sequel to this one. Survival Skills for Freelancers came out in 2020 and has 20 years of freelance experience plus quotes from 120 freelancers. We're going to put that one to the side just for now. For the purposes of this discussion, this is the first Little Book of Confusables, which is a gorgeous, beautiful, fun, and essential book all about those words that people misuse and get confused, and lots of fun, memorable ways to remember the difference between those similar words. So the sequel is this, the Little Book of Confusables 2. This book has 600 plus words demystified. This one has another 500, so it is completely new. A few people have asked me whether it's just a new version of the same book, but no, all of these entries are completely new examples, same level of fun, essential, and gorgeous. I'm not just saying that, look at it. It really is. It's gorge. So this is the sequel. This is the original. And yeah, there we go.
I love it. And that's just so fun that book 1 didn't get the book 2, but book 2 got the book 2 when it's book 2. So you're just like, okay, Confusables, you've taken it to a whole new level.
Yes.
I love it. So now fill us in on the backstory. When did book 2 of Confusables, when did that actually start to gel?
Yeah, well, it actually started exactly. You could have fed me this. It was perfect. While I was writing this, it was getting chunky, as you can see. It's a lot of pages, and I was very aware of the print cost to make it feasible to actually print and mail out to people. And I thought, I'm going to have to stop at some point. I kept saying, I worked with my son closely on this one. I had a graphic designer put together the layout based on the design that I came up with, and he created the template, and then my son taught himself InDesign and he did all the layout. So we got to the stage where I was like, oh no, I really wanted to include this one. This would be really fun. And he said, Mum, you're gonna have to stop somewhere. And he said, why don't you start keeping a list? And the day I signed off the manuscript of Confusables 1, the list in my phone, which went on to become Confusables 2, started that very same day. So now, of course, now I've finished Confusables 2, there is a similar list starting for Confusables 2, Confusables 3, but there will only ever be 3 versions of this book.
Okay, why do you say that? Why are we stopping at 3?
I think everything I do with my books is very in tune with intuition. I think it's very much energy led, and I mean, for quite a long time, like a really long time actually, I had the pretty completed list of all the entries that were going into this book on my phone for a really long time before it actually became more than a Google Doc. And it was only really when I got the contents of the Google Doc flowed into the InDesign, the graphic design file for this one, that it suddenly gained momentum. And suddenly I was thinking, okay, so before I wasn't even thinking of finishing it before the end of 2024. And then I suddenly decided I'd get it out in time for Christmas. And it all happened within about 2 weeks. So it's very energy led, it's very intuitive. I knew exactly what I wanted them to look like, etc. And it just feels like 3, and then we stop there. It will enable it to still seem just as fresh, but I think more than 3 would feel like it's milking a successful concept.
I love that. And I think that's brilliant because first of all, I believe in 3 of everything. To me, 3 is a magic number for everything, for points, for humor, for this, for that. It's just a beautiful number and so balanced. So that totally makes sense. And I love that you're saying that sometimes we envision something, we see the whole thing, and then we just start working on one chunk at a time. And I love that you kind of envisioned how it would all go together. And then it's just really working with people. Lovely that it was your son, working with people that can make that vision a reality. Yeah. So did you always see it as a small book?
Yes, I did. It's funny. The first one, this one, I had the idea for it back in 2016 and it didn't come out until 2020. And I remember having this idea and going and talking to this lady who lives nearby in Gloucestershire in England, who had published a lot of fiction books on Amazon, self-published, and she was fairly successful with them. And I just thought, you know, do you mind if I just kind of ask you some questions about it? And she said, oh yeah, I'd love to meet, let's have a chat over coffee one day. So we met for coffee, she told me all about it and made copious notes, went home and thought, absolutely not. And I stayed in the absolutely not phase for, well, obviously 6 years. And then all of a sudden, something happened and the momentum was there and the energy carried me. And again, just it all came together. And I think that's the difference. I feel like when you read a book, imagine you just pick up a random business book and it's not something that you've had recommended and you just kind of see it and maybe you like the cover or you like the concept and you pick it up and you read it and it feels soulless. And I think there's a lot of that. The whole Daniel Priestley, key person of influence, oh, hey, you must publish a book and then you're going to be seen as an expert in your field. It's going to boost your authority, all this kind of thing. I didn't do that with any of my books. I wrote Survival Skills, the first one, and then I listened to Key Person of Influence and I thought, hang on, I've done all this already, just by chance. So it very much feels like when the energy's with it, people can sense that in the book. And I think that's why they've all got so much love for them. They've had so much, I think this one's got 450 plus 5-star reviews on Amazon, which is incredible. And I don't, like, not a day goes by that I don't count my lucky stars that's the way it's worked out, because I just want to help people with my books. And I think the more other people can spread the word about how they have been helped by them or supported, or they've been entertained, or they've laughed, you know, like other writers doing posts saying, I thought I knew everything about language, but this book proved me wrong. Like, that is a brave thing to go out and say, but it's a realistic thing, because we all do have those blind spots. I literally just last week had I can't remember which book it's in, first or second. I think it might be second. I have a copywriters WhatsApp group that I put together in lockdown. And someone said something about, oh, Sarah, for your next Confusables book, you need to have just desserts. And I said, oh, I screen grabbed it. It is in the first book, if I can find it. Yeah, I should have had it handy, look. And I said, oh, like this, you mean? and two of the other copywriters said, wait, what? I've been spelling it wrong my whole life. And that's the thing. You don't look up what you think you know. So, yeah, I think I'm going off piste a little bit here. Sorry, Gillian.
No, I think that's brilliant. And I always love the backstories. I love the backstories. So are there any that like you're probably a god now when it comes to like not making mistakes, but are there any that like even you having written the book, you still struggle with? Are there like some Achilles heels for you?
Yeah, there really are. Like I used to get really scuppered over practice. I just that would not go into my head. But now I have used my own tip, which is just to remember that, oh, it's different in the US, of course. That's a really bad example, isn't it? Because that's one that's different. But yeah, there are certainly, I'm trying to think, I had to look something up just the other day. I can't remember what it was, but I've actually got, like, those are fancy copies, the ones that I've just been showing you. But look at this is my like day-to-day copy. It looks like this. That's how funny it is. The spine is bent to pieces, and it's like this. It'll flop open. So yeah, libelous and slanderous, dingy and dingy. Yeah. But I think it is just that thing of everybody can learn from it, because it's not like they're not preachy. They're books about spelling, but they're fun.
They're very fun.
Quite a difficult concept to get across. You know, people think, well, spelling's not fun. But given that I've sold copies of these books and people have said, I bought this for myself, but then I found it in my 10-year-old's bedroom and he was using it to do his homework. And I love that. I just love it.
Well, and I know on my review on your first book, I said, why wasn't this in school for me when I was a kid? Because it was like all these kind of things were like you were just expected to know it. And I don't have a photographic memory. That's just one of the ways that my brain works. But give me a little trick, like give me like a little fun device, and I can remember anything. So that's what you've done. And I've said, this should be in schools. This is like, it would make that whole, learning English grammar so important. It was so easy peasy.
Yeah, I think so too. I really strongly believe it should be in all colleges, all universities, all schools. But like, just to share on the basis of the one that we just talked about, the just desserts, to give you an example of how the descriptions are done. I'm going to just put my glasses on for this. So just desserts says when you get what you deserve. So they all have a really short, punchy description for how you use them. And then just desserts, the other spelling says what? No main course. And then it says, remember, think of the SS as a double helping of dessert. And then while both desserts and deserve have just one S, just dessert sounds like my kind of restaurant. So they're like kind of silly, it's nerdy, but the number of people who say these books are a joy, like that they're a joy of a book. And I love that, because I love bringing joy to people's lives. That makes my day, my week, my month. I love it.
I love that. So you talked about the confusings, the confusable of people thinking, is this the second edition versus book 2? So how have you been clarifying that in your marketing message?
Well, I've started to use a slightly different tagline. So the first one was all about commonly confused words, whereas this one I've started to say misused words demystified. So like demystifying 500 plus misused words. So that's kind of the subtle difference, really. But the main way that I that's a funny one. Naturalist versus naturist. The main way I market, I suppose, is really to share the screen grabs of the pages, because otherwise you can't tell from this that it's going to look like this and be this accessible and easy to use inside. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of started talking about them as a pair, really. Just, 1,000+ words demystified across the two books, and they're both $11.95 in the UK, so they're not even expensive. There's a lot of value in there, but a lot of people just say that they're the sort of book you keep on your desk, so you keep them close to hand, and that is something that it applies to both of them, the first and the second.
And then I've noticed in your marketing, sometimes you have both copies of the book, and then that really helps clarify, oh, there's a 1 and a 2. And I believe, if I'm correct, you also put them in a series in Amazon so that people would be aware, which is, I think, a really brilliant thing to do, that a lot of people, they don't get that. And, if you do it right, book 2 should help market book 1, correct?
Yes, that's absolutely the way I was going with it. And also, I think, people have found Survival Skills for Freelancers that way as well, because they've gone through my author page on Amazon. I didn't realize, I confess, when I went to upload the Little Book of Confusables 2, that you could set them up as a series. And it was a bit of a faff to do that behind the scenes on Amazon KDP, as anybody who's self-published will know. It's not intuitive. In fact, it's downright difficult at times. But once you've set it up, it'll be really easy for me to add book 3 to it, for example, when that does come along.
Yes, and I can vouch that you can even set up your series before there's a second book. So if you go in knowing, because I know for my last book, it was, from expert to author, I knew already, like you, that there was going to be a book 2. I don't have a publishing date, so it's not on pre-order or anything, but I'm going to go ahead and set up the series now so that it's very clear. So I thought that was actually kind of cool that Amazon allows you to do that with book 1 even. So
that is cool. Smart. Yeah, very smart.
That's good. So can I ask you, when you were doing book 2, did you follow the same structure visually, your process? Did you change anything going from book 1 of Confusables to book 2, or did you just keep everything the same?
No, I basically kept everything the same. The only thing internally that I did differently was with book 1, I wrote the whole thing. I wrote the manuscript in, I think it was Word, but I wrote the manuscript for book 2 in Google Docs, but I didn't finish it in Google Docs, because as you can see, each of the entries, if I have 4 similar words on the page, there's no space for a specific remember an example, for example. So if I write this and then I write a remember and an example, and then I come to flow it into the page, then I'm having to lose all of that. So because I got this, I knew what all the words were, I had all the definitions pinned down, but I hadn't written the remembers and the examples. And actually doing it within InDesign meant that there were no layout issues to resolve. So it was like the first proof of the manuscript, the first draft of the manuscript was the first proof of the manuscript, because I was doing all my own editing. I got a second pair of eyes on it, obviously, because everybody makes mistakes in their own stuff because we're too close to it and can't see them. But actually, given the fact that I was the one editing and proofreading, it made more sense for me to do the layout myself. So I got my graphic designer to just flow through everything as it stood and then just leave it, and I took over. So I worked on the InDesign file, and that was really great. I have to say though, I had a ton. I think I had so much resistance putting this book out for months and months because of that, the whole tricky second book thing. And I know it wasn't my second book, I know it was my third, but you could never compare these two because they're completely different entities, but you absolutely could compare these two. And I I really loved that somebody on LinkedIn, Lorna Smart, she's called, she's a fellow copywriter, and she's been so supportive of all my books. And she posted a review and said something like, I wish I could remember exactly what she said, but something along the lines of, this isn't as good as the first book, ... it's better. Kind of like, because the concept is developed even further. So whereas this one has all the basics in, so it'll have the different versions of its and stationery and principle and the obvious ones, plus plenty of non-obvious ones. This was more taking the concept further, but nothing really changing, just developing. Sense? I kind of feel like I've contradicted myself there, but I know what I'm trying to say.
No, I think I get it. And I think that what I'll feed it back to you and you can tell me if it makes sense, because this is what I'm picking up, is that there's a little bit of, you have to like level up with the second book, because it's like, you don't want to have people going, oh, yawn, she just slept through it. She just took a bunch of stuff and said, been there, done that. And then, shoved it up on Amazon. You don't want that. You want to basically, it's like a movie. Do you want it to be like, okay, version one, book, movie number one was better than the sequel. You want that. It's like the Terminator movies. I love the Terminator movies. And when Terminator 2 came out, it was better than Terminator 1.
Die Hard.
Yes, the Die Hard.
Sequels, too many sequels are not as good as the original.
Yes. And you do find that if the second one is kind of yawn, there will be no third. There will be no third. So it's almost like, if you really want to stay in the game, you have to up the ante and really do that number 2 right, which is then the pathway for number 3, because then people will be like chomping at the bit, waiting for it. So that's what I take away from what you said. And I think that's actually really great advice. It's like, don't sleep through it, give it your best and make it better. So
yes, you summed that up so perfectly. And I also think there was a lot of fear. It was kind of fear-based motivation, because I couldn't bear the thought of people being disappointed, because there's been so much love for Survival Skills, my first book, and for the first Little Book of Confusables. I just didn't want people to go, oh, that's a shame. And so far the reviews have been super positive.
I love that. So let's get into one of the reasons why we had to do this live, pre-recorded, and that's because you have plans tomorrow during the live, because you're going to be at an award dinner. Yeah. And that's the thing between number 1 and number 2. This is like you won an award for number 1. You're nominated for an award for number 2. So can you tell us all about the award?
Yeah, for sure. So just for context, book 1 won 3 awards, including a gold medal. They were all American awards, and they were all in the writing and publishing category. So not to kind of take the edge off the fact that it's won 3 awards, but you never know for sure. Like, maybe there were only 2 people entered that category. You just don't know when it's a small, I think this is me being a bit kind of imposter syndrome-y about it, but you just don't know when it's a small niche category that you get shortlisted in. It's kind of like, wow, yeah, that's great, that's cool. And it was the first thing I'd ever won. It was the first medal I'd ever got, and I was absolutely overjoyed. But then this one has now been shortlisted for the UK Selfies Book Awards, which is for the self-publishing industry, and the award announcement is tomorrow. And there are only 3 categories in this award. So there's children's, fiction, and non-fiction, and this made the final for the non-fiction category. So that for me feels huge, because non-fiction could be about business or psychology or running or dogs, whatever. It could be about anything. This little book made it through. So that is exactly why we had to reschedule from recording this live tomorrow.
Awesome. So can you tell us where you'll be tomorrow? Is it a banquet, or how is it all being organized?
So it is at the London Book Fair, which I've never been to before. So I get to go to the London Book Fair, have kind of a wander around there. It's not a banquet or a big fancy dinner because there are only 3 categories. So there aren't actually that many people involved. And I think whereas the US awards probably were quite big ceremonies because they had 50 billion different categories, there were loads of people involved and it could be a big fancy dinner. Whereas this is kind of, you go along and then they're going to do the announcement, they're going to make a bit of a fuss over it and whatever. And yeah, we'll be getting the train home yesterday, time travel, getting the train home tomorrow. And yeah, fingers crossed. Well, I'll have some news either way. So
I love that. I love that. And to be honest with you, even the fact that you were nominated is a success. So, it means that somebody recognized, hey, this book is good. It's worth looking at, like, to me, just being honored with the nomination and being shortlisted for that is wonderful. So we all wish you luck tomorrow, and please, we'd love if you come in and type in and let us know what happens. Yes or no, we don't care. We're supporting you one way or another.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it'll be nice to meet some of my fellow finalists. It will be nice to just kind of have that experience of being part of that. But yeah, I don't know. There's this element of me that thinks, well, it's like the target audience. I know that they always say this in marketing, you shouldn't do the target audience as everyone, but with this book, so many people have said everyone who writes needs this book, and that is pretty much all of us. So I'm kind of thinking, well, I don't know. I won't be disappointed if I don't win, but at the same time, I back my books 100% because I know how much they've helped and entertained people. So got everything crossed.
I love that. I love that. So what was the timing between book 1 and book 2, and when can we expect book 3?
Well, there's been 2 years between each of the 3 of my books. So 2020, then 22, and then 24. So I think the fact that this was going to come out this year, it just felt as if it messed with the numbers a little bit. And there's a nice bit of rhythm about a book every 2 years. So I'm not putting any excess pressure on myself because I find the way my brain functions, if I am not feeling the energy behind something, it won't be as good as it can possibly be. So I will have a tentative idea that it will be coming out in 2026. But I'm not going to kind of make any wild promises. And you never know. I think because I've had neurodivergence diagnosis since writing Survival Skills for Freelancers. And now when I look back, I think, gosh, there's so much in there about my way of coping with a neurodivergent brain and running a business at the same time. And I think I might do something for neurodivergent freelancers. I don't know, but that's like a possibility that I might do that at some stage, but we'll see.
I love that. I love that. And there's a lot. We've had that as a discussion on my show before. So yes, good stuff. Good stuff. So as we're kind of getting to the end of the show, Sarah, is there any kind of final words of wisdom that you would give to anybody watching the replay, listening to the podcast, of if they're thinking about a book 2, what kind of advice would you give?
I think make sure you've got enough worthwhile and valuable content to make it feel like it can be a level up on the first book, because otherwise I think you will always feel a little bit, almost a bit sheepish about kind of talking about it, because it won't feel quite as good and it will feel like a pay limitation, and nobody wants that. So I think exactly what you said earlier on, Gillian, about just try to level it up in some way. It can be a subtle little thing, but just make sure it's just got a little bit more oomph, and then you can be just as proud talking about the second book as you are the first.
Brilliant. Thank you. That's great advice. Well, thank you very much for being here today, Sarah.
Oh.
Thank you for everybody who tuned in. And of course, we're crossing our fingers for you that you'll be reporting in with some amazing news. So with that, we'll say goodbye and we'll see you guys all next week. Okay. Bye, everybody.